Sony is finally seeing that their biggest strength doesn't lie in the display or in the audio, but the camera. Borrowing alpha camera features for phones isn't a bad move. But is it enough?
No! How could you say that? Technology serves the greater good.
Actually, that's a myth that technology companies use to take advantage of us.
Welcome back to Need to Know. You'd think that in the world of tech, companies would be flexible, right? Well, not really. Not Sony, at least. The company is stubborn as ever. Their recently announced phones prove it on several counts. Just this week, Sony showed off 2 new phones in a live-streamed event now that MWC has been cancelled. I'm not hating their stubbornness in this case, guys. I'd hate seeing all the mobile launches this year fall apart because of the coronavirus. So I'm happy to see that Sony kept their word and showed off not 1 but 2 phones, one of them a mid-ranger, the Sony 1 Mark II and the Sony 10 Mark II. Yep, they've gone there. If the features weren't a dead giveaway for the phone's link to the Mark cameras, the name totally is. After all, the Z's and the X's and the 1s and 2s in their phone namings, Sony decided to complicate our lives even more with Mark versions. That, by the way, are written with Roman characters. Name-wise, it's definitely a mouthful. If you think of the marketing and positioning of these devices, it makes sense. Sort of. Sony is finally seeing that their biggest strength doesn't lie in the display or the audio, but the camera. Although, there's a lot to push on the audio side too. Their camera pedigree is well known, so borrowing alpha camera features for phones isn't a bad move. But is it enough? Comment below after you hear what Sony brings to the table. So, the flagship phone, Xperia 1 Mark II, has a triple camera on the back with 3 12-megapixel Zeiss lenses. That's not impressive at all considering Samsung's 108-megapixel camera, but Sony tried to compensate in a different way, with a 1.7-inch sensor on the wide one. That's the same as the sensor on Galaxy S20 Plus. And they've played to their strengths. What's that supposed to mean? Well, they've added 20 FPS burst mode, which they're saying it's a mobile first. They've also added optical image stabilization and autofocus 60 times per second. A bit extra, if you ask me, at least for casual users, but pretty exciting for photographers. Talking about pros, Sony also added a new Photo Pro app besides the existing Cinema Pro. Open this app and you'll feel like you've turned your mirrorless camera, not your phone. The interface is that similar. Eye tracking is back and now works with animals too, for photographers who take more pet portraits than humans. And you can play with white balance, setting it just right for realistic pics. How is the video recording then? Better than decent. Turns out you can record 4K at 60 frames per second and 2K at 120 frames per second. And if you go for this Sony phone, you won't need to worry about audio. The phone filters outdoor noise at capture and you can experience it at 360 reality audio. This means you'll have the illusion of sound coming at you from all around. And my dear audiophiles, who can forget about the headphone jack? Stubborn old Sony brought it back after giving it up last year. A move that made sense to me a couple of years ago, but not in 2020. Now, the best headphone companies out there are making and selling wireless headphones that are just as good as their wired counterparts. Most Android phone makers, like Samsung, are throwing in earbuds just for good measure. Okay, some users might be nostalgic and unwilling to part with their wired headphones, but are there enough of them to matter? You tell us, is a headphone jack still a deal breaker today?
Listen, there's absolutely no time to explain. I'm you from the future. They're all gone.
What?
All of them. They're all gone.
What's gone?
The headphone jacks. They're all gone.
As for the camera, is it enough to set apart Sony's phone? Their camera expertise can be a great differentiator, but is it coming a bit too late to the table? Sony's phones still leave lukewarm impressions and have never taken a risk to set a niche. Samsung is by now appreciated for its premium materials, software and design innovation. Huawei has impressed us with their camera power. Vivo, Oppo, and Xiaomi are always experimenting with displays, and OnePlus is the kind of remarkable phones on a budget. So, who is Sony? How would you define a Sony phone? If they had really pushed their mirrorless cameras tech on a phone instead of dipping their toes in many places, I would have an easy answer. But I don't. That doesn't mean Sony One Mark II isn't a very good Android phone. It comes with the latest chip, 8 GB of RAM, a 4000 mAh battery, and water resistance. Of course, Sony's side fingerprint sensor is still here. Their 21:9 aspect ratio remains. They're stubborn like that. The tall design is not the most convenient to handle, but it does show more vertical information like tweets and emails. There's 5G connectivity available for Europe only. In the US, you'll have to go with 4G. Annoying, true, but Sony hopes to calm the spirits with Xperia Pro. Yes, that phone will bring 5G to US and serve as a video camera accessory. It will even have an HDMI port to use it as a monitor. An idea I personally love. Finally, a Pro phone with pros in mind. You haven't said anything about the second phone. Oh, I know, there's not much to tell, honestly, except maybe for a couple of things I was excited to finally see in a Sony mid-ranger. So, at $350, you get the same richer colors and deeper blacks as with the $1,099 One Mark II. But this one comes with a full HD resolution, no 4K in sight. It also has in common with its flagship brother two other things: the headphone jack and the water resistance. 4K recording is in the books, but you'll have to deal with 665 chip, a weaker camera, less RAM, only 4 GB, and smaller battery. As you can tell, Sony hasn't really made an impression on us this year. You can appreciate all the new camera features on Sony One Mark II, but with so much competition out there, it seems unlikely that Sony will ever catch up. Can the alpha camera features raise customers' interest in a Sony phone? How would you define Sony's phones? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget, subscribe and hit the bell button if you want to see more videos like this. See you guys!